The story of the day is the LIV Tour and the PGA Tour forming an alliance. So I guess the Fire Pit Collective is frozen over. Joining us here right now is Alan Shipnuck, whose work on this front is well known and has been fantastic. And I could not be more appreciative of Alan joining us on this huge day to give us his thoughts. How you doing, Alan?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Rich.
What happened today, Alan?
Absolute thunderbolt. I mean, this is the biggest story golf has seen, non-Tiger division this century, and there's been so many twists and turns in this tale, but we finally have something like a resolution. Many details still need to be worked out, but the war is over, and now it's about winning the peace, and it's going to be fascinating to see how this all plays out. Well,
why did the war come to an end?
It was unsustainable for both sides. The PGA Tour, to try and fight off this incursion from LIV Golf, had put all its chips in the middle of the table, but it was basically borrowed money. They were tapping the reserves they'd built up, and they were trying to squeeze all of their corporate sponsors for more and more support, and the sponsors were pushing back. And I think the tour realized we just can't keep going. I mean, AT&T just pulled out of the Byron Nelson, the Honda pulled out of the Honda Classic. Like the asking price has gotten much too high for the return on the investment. And for LIV Golf, it took a monumental effort to launch, and credit to them, they got this thing off the ground. But their ratings on the CW network were so abysmal, they stopped reporting them. I mean, I think they realized that it was just a limited audience for what they were proposing, and so they were on this path of mutually assured destruction, to use an old Cold War term, and it just made sense to finally put the egos aside and the grievances and the name calling and the lawsuits and all the related bitchiness, and just find a solution that would make sense for both sides and be sustainable for both sides.
And beneficial to both sides is neither gets deposed. No one in the Saudi government has to be deposed, and nobody in the PGA Tour gets sued for antitrust. Those go away. Everybody puts their I guess thoughts aside. And what does Jay Monahan say to Rory McIlroy and everybody who turned down that money by making peace with the organization that paid a whole bunch of his colleagues' money? Rory's out, if I'm not mistaken, $500 million at least. What does he say to them, Alan?
I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Don't delete my phone number. There's still a way for these guys to get paid. I mean, so many details have to be worked out, but the LIV model is going to endure in some fashion, and they can still pay Rory and give him a franchise. They could even do that with Tiger, even as a non-playing captain. No doubt there's going to be some makeup money that's going to flow from the public investment fund into some of these top tour players who remained loyal and renounced and turned down the deals. But the gold rush is over. There's not much leverage anymore. I mean, how much they don't really need Rory McIlroy's blessing anymore. They don't need Jon Rahm. This is happening with or without them, and so they will try and make good in some fashion, but there's going to be some very hurt feelings. And it's not the Rahms and the Rorys, they're going to be okay either way. But it's like Ricky Fowler, he turned down $75 million from LIV Golf, and now he's been in this multi-year slump. He has no leverage. He has no bargaining power. There's a whole other class of player who they're not going to make it up to, and they missed out on a once-in-a-lifetime windfall. So it's going to be a very complex negotiation for Jay Monahan and some of the other tour loyalists to try and work their way through these next few months and years as these guys, they bought into everything that the tour was selling and everything that Monahan was saying. But in the end, money always wins, and that's really the headline.
No, it might not be that they bought into what Monahan was selling. Maybe they didn't want to take the Saudi money. Maybe they had some sort of a principle that they didn't want to break. And now you're saying that there will be some sort of reparations slush fund funded by the Saudis that will be serve as a we're sorry, take all the money that we wanted to offer you and you didn't want to take from us. And is that really what you just suggested, Alan, might happen?
Well, I love that you're such an idealist, Rich.
I am. I don't have to tell you. No, and I understand too is that the Saudis could come and buy the National Football League. You know what I mean? Like, and then what? And that's what a lot of people are I guess extrapolating today to mean. I mean, did the Saudis just buy golf, Alan? Did that just happen?
They bought a piece of it for sure, just like they've been buying, English Premier football teams, and they've been hosting big-time F1 races, and they've heavyweight boxing bouts, and everything from horse racing to snooker. I mean, the Saudis have just become bigger and bigger players in professional sports, and that makes a lot of people uncomfortable, rightly so, but it just is. I mean, they are a factor in the modern life in any number of ways, whether it's a Boeing jet or taking an Uber or all these things that they've become part of the global economy, and sports is now been swept up in that. So, yeah, there's I think every sports league is going to have to gird themselves for this kind of intrusion, and sports fans as well. But if you look at what's happening in the English Premier football, the teams that aren't owned, and it's not just the Saudis, also the Qataris, Egyptian. There's been a lot of Middle Eastern money that's flown into that sport, and the teams that aren't owned by those interests, the fans are bitter because they don't have the money to compete. Like if you're a team, whatever your favorite sport is, if there's no salary cap, this is like the Brewers competing against the Yankees, right? And so it's the calculus has changed. I mean, the insidious thing about sports washing is that it works, because over time people get tired of the debate, they get tired of the preaching, whatever it is. There's just a fatigue sets in, and people shrug their shoulders and say, okay, I guess this is just the way it is. And that's the long game that the Saudis have been playing here, and it's obviously been proven quite effective. So yeah, whether it was John Rahm or it was Rory or it was Tiger, they had their reasons for saying no to the LIV Golf offers, but LIV Golf is now the PGA Tour. They're one and the same.
Wow. Alan Shipnuck here on the Rich Eisen Show from the Fire Pit Collective. Party at Phil's house today?
He's certainly feeling vindicated. I mean, he's been raging against the machine for a long time of professional golf, and that it was this sort of antiquated model where the PGA Tour was this 501c3 nonprofit. They couldn't take an outside investment, they couldn't sell equity, and that he felt like golfers and every stakeholder in the game was losing out on the real big money. And he was right, for sure. I mean, this has proven it. And, it came at a high cost reputationally for Phil, but he cashed in, he took the money up front, and he owns a LIV franchise. And there's a lot of details that still need to be worked out, but the LIV golf model of having these teams is not going to go away. And so the players who own these franchises, those values just skyrocketed, because all of a sudden you're going to get all the best players together in these joint events. They're going to be televised on the major networks, not on CW or not on YouTube. So the TV money is going to flow, the exposure, the corporate sponsorships, and to your earlier point, like there's this uneasiness about doing business with Saudi Arabia, even though everyone does it. I mean, the biggest tour sponsors have huge interest. PGA Tour sponsors have huge interest in Saudi Arabia, whether it's FedEx or Coca-Cola or Morgan Stanley. They all do business over there, but it's been sort of on the down low, and this is going to change that. It's like all of a sudden, the official stamp of approval in the world of golf has been granted to do business. So the value of these LIV franchises is going to be what they always hoped it would be. And so a guy like Phil, who owns a big chunk of his team, and Bryson and Brooks Koepka and Dustin Johnson, I mean, they're getting paid coming and going. They got the money to sign. Now they're going to make the money on the franchises. So the players who stayed loyal to the PGA Tour are losing out both ways.
So then describe to me here, because this is, I think, the most confusing aspect to so many fans in the first blush moments of this stunning news that the LIV Tour and the PGA Tour are going to join forces after the PGA Tour said, never. So are you saying that there's going to be some PGA Tour events, they'll decide which ones they are, that are just going to be LIV Tour, and it's going to be the same branding, but under the PGA Tour umbrella, anyone can join a team? There's going to be a team aspect? How does this work?
Yeah, well, so many details are unknown, but it's not going to be a LIV or a Tour event. It's going to be this new entity. They haven't even named it yet. So it's going to be a whole third rail. You'll have your traditional PGA Tour events in Phoenix and in Pebble Beach and all those places. But then there was already going to be contraction of the PGA Tour schedule because as the tours devoted more and more money and attention to the biggest names and the glitziest events, they were losing sponsorships, and these sort of B-list events were going to wither and blow away anyway. So now what's going to happen, those spots that open up on the calendar, they're going to plug in these new events, whatever they're called, LIV/Tour. And the players are going to be able to flow back and forth. So how that's going to be very contentious, how they're going to who the gatekeeper is going to be and how that's going to play out. That's going to take a long time to figure out. But basically, if Roy doesn't want to play in those, that's his choice. But I think you can expect all the top players are going to go to these events, and it's going to be sort of the super schedule where you have the elevated PGA Tour events, and then you have this new tour within a tour that's going to have the team component. And so there'll be all the best LIV players, and there'll be some of the best PGA Tour players. And as a golf fan, I think it's a huge win. You're just going to get all the, because the way that the tours have been separated, they're only coming together now 4 times a year at the majors. That's what made the Masters and the PGA Championship so electric. You had the LIV guys against the Tour guys. Well, now they're going to be mixing a lot more often, and I'm in the minority here, but I've enjoyed the team aspect on LIV. I think it's been cool, and everyone had to pretend to hate it because you had to pick a side, and modern life is so polarizing. You can't see any nuance, and so all the Tour loyalists said, "Oh, the team stuff's lame," and LIV, but it's been, if you got into it, it's been fun to follow. And so now, the last thing we need is more 72-hole stroke play events. Like, the PGA Tour is so tedious; it's the same thing week after week. So these new events, whatever they're called, will just bring a whole different dimension to it. You'll have these built-in rivalries, and LIV has already, very cleverly created these team identities with one team's all Australian, one's all South African, one is all Asian, one is Latin American, and so you get these built-in rooting interests. And so now you add the friction of bringing together the Tour loyalists and the LIV guys, and I think, if you can set aside your qualms about where the money's coming from, and that's not easy for a lot of people, and I understand. As a golf fan, I think your life just got better. And instead of having, the John Deere Classic with no stars in it, you're going to get these mega combined events with a different format, and I think it has a chance to be really, really exciting and impactful. And just speaking as a golf consumer.
So a couple more minutes for you, Alan. 2 more questions for you, Alan Shipnuck here. What does it mean for the guy who's 250, 230, 300 on the tour? What does that guy? What does this mean for the rank and file, if you will?
Yeah, well, they've already been marginalized. I mean, with the PGA Tour in this battle to keep its top players, they kind of bifurcated the schedule where you have these elevated events, huge money, all the top players. Then you had all these other events, much smaller money, and that was left for the journeyman, basically. So their life had already changed, and however, they will have opportunities because the European Tour is part of this announcement, because it's been hitched to the PGA Tour institutionally for the last year, and LIV gobbled up the Asian Tour and has poured a lot of money in. So there's always going to be a place to play, but it might not be in Arizona or Florida. You might have to go to Kuala Lumpur or Madrid, but there will be opportunities for these guys to play, and there'll be good money because the PIF is now going to open the spigot and kind of take care of the entire golf ecosystem. So, but it's clear, like, golf has gone to a star system. They've prioritized the big names. Liv made that happen, and the tour responded, and so these guys will have a place to play. They'll probably make more money, but there's going to be some long plane flights in their future.
And then the last question is, as you mentioned, the reimagining of what the PGA Tour looks like in a season of golf looks like. Is it possible that PIF, as you referred to, decides to anoint a new fifth major, right? Or because the majors are already some of them are, the purse isn't the largest on the tour for some of these majors. Is it possible they decide we're just going to create a new spot, we're going to pour a ton of money and make one purse so damn big the media and the players will be forced to consider it as one of the most important events?
They don't have that power. That belongs to a much more learned, sophisticated, and important constituency, the sports writers. We decide what matters.
Nice. Attaboy. Look at you.
The PGA Tour has pumped money into the Players' Championship forever. No one considers it a major. Money is not what makes these things matter. It's history, it's venue, it's provenance. It's so they could create they could have a $500 million purse. It doesn't make it a major. It just makes it decadent. So the majors are the majors. Their importance will remain, but the landscape is certainly going to change around week to week leading up to the tournaments that really matter.
And I guess if LIV Tour and the PGA Tour are getting together, are you and Greg Norman BFFs again? Right? Now you're together? Right?
I mean, Greg, this has been 30 years in the making for Greg Norman. He's finally gotten the vindication he sought. He's finally gotten the validation from the PGA Tour. So Greg's happy. My relationship with Greg comes and goes, but I will say, I mean, he's been the driver in all this. And whatever your personal feelings about the guy, you have to tip your cap and say his force of will, this vision he had back in 1994. I mean, he has reshaped the sport in a profound way. So whatever his shortcomings as a human being, as a businessman and as a visionary, I mean, he's looking pretty good today.
Well, at least the photograph of this moment in time for me, the LIV Tour versus PGA Tour, will always, that photograph of him staring a hole through you while you're being pulled aside. That's it for me, Alan. I'll be honest with you.
It's a classic. It's the classic of the genre, and I'm glad that I impacted you so deeply.
You always do. Keep looking for more of my phone calls. I know you got a lot of people pulling at you today. I appreciate you calling into my show, Alan. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you got it. It's always fun. Thank
you. That's Alan Shipnuck, the Fire Pit Collective writer who is at the center of everything. Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.